You can't prove any fossil had any children. You simply cannot prove that. You certainly cannot prove any fossil found anywhere had children that were different than itself.
Why do we not see migration from Mount Ararat between all species, if what you're saying is true?
Okay, you have way more faith in carbon dating than you should. Carbon dating was invented after World War II with the atomic bomb. They realized, man, this is producing some strange things, Carbon dating is based on obvious assumptions.
You have to just deny the existence of carbon-14 and its validity. You would basically have to throw out all actual biblical icons and artifacts that have been recovered and used carbon dating to determine exact. Therefore, my whole position that we could observe migration based on carbon or radiometric dating to you would you basically just have to deny all of reality in order to get this to work. How did the koalas make it? They can, by the way, only eat eucalyptus. How did they make it from Australia and then go to the through the Pacific Ocean? And then, I don't know, maybe they took a raft of eucalyptus and then they high-fived Noah as they went up there. And then when they were done, they waddled on back?
Well, as far as I know, it is correct that koalas today can only live on eucalyptus.
Whenever you are ready, First Amender, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Appreciate it. Let me, I need to share a PowerPoint, so just give me one quick second. Okay, so this is evolution provides a better explanation for the origin and diversity of life than creationism. So I had to consider what exactly that I was going to talk about in order to address this particular topic. And I was able to come down to the best way to explain this was if I provide a biogeography crash course. So I apologize, it's going to be a little wordy, but hopefully it will make more sense as we go through it and you understand the evidence that is mounted against Kent Hovind. This, you can see right here, appears to be Pangea, which allowed for an even disbursement of creatures freely being able to travel across continents. The biology was vastly different compared to today, but we would observe vast common ancestry across creatures that we see now. Eventually, the Tethys Sea, and that is the section that you see on the right there, not the left, began widening each split apart of Pangea into two distinct landmasses, Laurasia and Gondwana. Each ended in their own unique evolutionary trajectories. Laurasia was the Arctic, Gondwana was the tropic. Laurasia pine genus, or scientifically called the Pinus genus, they named it that, saying pine trees exhibit a clear Laurasian distribution that only grow in areas that once belonged to the quote-unquote Arctic realm. And you can see on the bottom right a modern map of the Pinus Range map. The Laurasian pressures, otherwise known as cold, this enabled there to be more pressures for cold-blooded creatures and preferred warm-blooded capable of regulating their temperature. This explains why there is a huge increase in mammalian creatures across the Laurasian supercontinent. This is also exhibited in fossil records as well as modern mammals across Laurasia. The cladogram that you see on the left has been reconstructed from mitochondrial and nuclear DNA protein characters, verifying an independent source outside of fossil records. As Laurasia aged also began to break apart, there was a cut line between Greenland and Eurasia, splitting the Arctic region in two, the Palearctic and the Nearctic. This split indicates why we exhibit Laurasia shared ancestry resulted in all flora and fauna having a direct analog across the Atlantic. This was also reinforced with the periodic reconnection through ice ages between Russia and Alaska in the Bering Strait. And in the Gondwana, or the warm, this is where you see the first true primates, including great apes, in the center of Africa. By then, Gondwana was already splitting apart. Primates weren't even able to fully distribute themselves, but were able to go to South America and India. And this is why you actually see specifically a dispersal of primates in a Gondwanan distribution. Here you can actually see the split between Africa and South America establishing their own ecosystems. South America was the Neotropic and Africa is the Afrotropic regions. This ended up with South America having sloths, anteaters, and armadillos, and Afrotheria received aardvarks, hyraxes, and tenrecs. With the Arctic megafauna, this left much larger herbivores to emerge from these groups. Sloths speciated into ground and aquatic sloths, anteaters into modern giant anteaters, armadillos into glyptodonts. For those who are not aware what a glyptodont is, I posted a picture of the skeletal remains of a glyptodont. They were very big. And then, of course, you have proboscidea, or what you would imagine as elephants, specifically having a proboscis for their nose, that it stems from having a common ancestor of the hyrax. When the North met the South, Africa met alongside Eurasia, which resulted in the creatures navigating and interchanging from the North to the South, alongside their evolutionary pathways. This is also why elephants, having traveled north, resulted in mammoths growing bigger and regrowing thicker fur. Lions, giraffes, hyenas, zebras all got the start in the Eurasian realm. The subtropic region, separated by the Sahara, enabled an ecosystem to maintain its own separate of the north of Africa and the Eurasian subcontinent. This is where primates are, and with the exception of humans, remain here. The same happened for the Americas, along with the connection of the Panama Canal, which caused an interchange species between the North and South America. It was not equal, however, and many Nearctic and Palearctic species made it to North America through the Bering Strait. Those in the north that made it through, highly dangerous and Arctic, were the most competitive species, resulting in camelids to make it over to South America, resulting in llamas and alpacas. Felids that migrated to the south became panthers and cougars, and rodentia turned into capybaras. Native animals in South America, such as ground sloths, became extinct due to this migration. This also reached a southern continent to reach a transitionary zone between the Arctic and the North Tropic South to a temperate zone, enabling migration that created some of the most diverse regions in the world. Similar recombination also happened in India, likely with a single species of monkey, which were then isolated, which brought on many species of monkeys throughout India. Eventually, India collided with the Laurasian continent, enabling a mixing of creatures. We can look at gibbons, macaques, and langurs as native to India. Because India is smashing into the Eurasian continent, this created a strong barrier between the species except for Southeast Asia. This led to a fusion of the Indian Southeast Asian species. This resulted into the region referred to as Indo-Malaya. This leaves Australia. Having been part of Gondwana, Australia remained connected to Antarctica for roughly 40 million years after the split between India. Marsupials had transferred from the north and moved southward, reaching Antarctica and Australia. Most marsupials were outcompeted with the exception of Australia. There is a tiny amount of marsupials still in the North and South America, such as opossums, but most were driven to extinction due to mammals. Australia, without any mammalian competition, enabled them to be the most competitive. It started from one marsupial species. From the top left to the bottom right, we can have kangaroos, koalas, wombats, quolls, Tasmanian devils, and the extinct thylacine. This is what made the Australasian realm. The landmasses pushed further and further north, allowing for a recombination of the Indo-Malayan realm. This is why there is a clear distinction of flora and fauna across Indonesia, otherwise known as the Wallace Line. A new interchange has, in fact, kick-started within our day. Antarctica had its own diverse biome, but roughly 50 million years ago was sent to the Shadow Realm, killing almost everything off. This leaves the Earth with 7 distinct terrestrial biomes, with exception to the Pacific Islands, which completely independent of their own distinct flora and fauna, being an 8th island destination on their own unique biomes in the Pacific volcanic distinct biota. It's different in every island. The reason why I told you all this just now is because should the biblical hypothesis hold true, we ought observe speciation occur roughly around the surrounding beginning post-flood, spread around Mount Ararat. However, we do not see this by geologic record, by DNA, by special similarity, or by ecological realm. Ergo, evolution, not young Earth creationism, is the best explanation for the diversity of species we observe today. Thank you very much, and you can follow me on YouTube, youtube.com/@firstamender. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Dr. Kent Hovind. Whenever you are ready for your opening statement, I'll start the timer up with your voice. And I know you got something as well. So here, I'll make it big screen for you. And you can go through it whenever you're ready. I'll start the timer with your voice.
Well, thank you so much. That's a great PowerPoint presentation you did. However, science deals with what we can observe, study, test, and replicate. We cannot observe any animal producing offspring other than their same kind. Nobody's ever seen a koala produce a non-koala. You can draw a line on a chart between a koala and an elephant if you'd like, but that is artwork, that is not science. Science is what we can observe, study, and demonstrate. Do the experiment. Nobody's ever seen an elephant produce a non-elephant. You guys draw these family trees like it's part of science. It's nothing but a religious belief, in my humble opinion. You believe those things are true, that's fine. I don't care what you believe, but don't call it science. Okay, as far as the origin of life, the purpose of this debate, I think it's important when you talk about this topic of evolution to get into the fact that there are 6 different meanings to that word, or levels or stages maybe. First would be cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter. That is purely religious. Nobody's ever seen a Big Bang produce a universe. You can imagine that if you'd like, but it's not science. Then you'd have to have this initial Big Bang producing hydrogen and helium turn to all the other elements. How do you get gold, silver, and platinum from hydrogen? I'd like to learn how to do that. That's never been observed. It can't be done. They say it can happen in stars. Well, you can't fuse past iron. So again, chemical evolution is purely religious, and you're welcome to believe that. But at this stage in world history, it is not part of science. Then we have stars evolving and planets evolving. That's never been seen. Then what we're talking about tonight, organic evolution, the origin of life. Nobody has a clue how to make life in the laboratory. All the scientists in the world combined cannot make an acorn. Yet that acorn knows how to make an oak tree. All the scientists in the world, and if all the scientists in the world someday produce life, all that would prove is it takes intelligence to make life. It would not prove it could happen by chance. So you have a first amender, you have a very good imagination, a very good skill with PowerPoint, but that's not science. I'm sorry. Nobody's ever observed life coming from non-life. Nobody's ever observed any life form from bacteria to whales producing babies other than their same kind. God said 20 times in the first 7 chapters of the Bible, the animals and plants would bring forth after their kind. That's what every farmer on the planet has observed for thousands of years. So if you wish to believe something else, that would be a religion, not a science. Then you have to have macroevolution, where an animal changes to a different kind of animal. That's never been observed. Nobody's ever seen. You drew lines on paper and you made claims, that this one turned to this one and this, all these diversified from a common ancestor. Those are simply claims. They are not observable science. And fossils aren't going to help at all. You talked about the fossil record a couple of times. No fossil counts as evidence for evolution. When you find any fossil in the dirt, all you could prove is it died. You cannot prove it had any children. You cannot prove it had different children. No animal today is capable of producing babies that are other than the same kind. But yet you think somehow a bone in the dirt could do that. That's why it's a religious belief, and you're welcome to it. But I wish you guys would just admit it's a religion, quit using tax-funded expenses to support your religion in our public schools. Evolution has nothing to do with science and should not be in our school system. Microevolution is a lousy term. I don't think they should use it, but they do. Microevolution just simply means there's variations within the kind. The original created dog kind was able to produce some dogs with longer fur, thicker fur, some with thinner fur. And those with thicker fur, like the wolf or the husky, they survive better in cold climates. They seem to like it better. The ones with thin fur, like a greyhound, they don't like the cold weather. They like a hotter climate. So I think we could probably agree that all the dogs in the world, and wolves and coyotes and dingoes and maybe a couple other types of animals that look like a dog, probably had a common ancestor called a dog. Wolf, I agree. So, and the 4 different kinds of elephants, African elephant, Asian elephant, mammoth, mastodon, probably had a common ancestor. But it doesn't prove it's related to a banana. You guys make these family trees like it's some kind of science. I'll show you. Here's the family trees they use in our textbook. Boys and girls, humans, birds, dinosaurs, ladybugs, and pine trees, and worms, and frogs are all related because we drew lines on paper connecting them. Here, all the different, I would think probably all the different hummingbirds could have come from a common ancestor. That would be science. But to say that hummingbirds are related to people and potatoes is not science. All it is, these family trees are drawing lines on paper. It's artwork. And even if later someday it's proven true, at this point in history, 2026, it's not science. It's not observable. Okay. Well, you talked about Pangea. Maybe you're unaware of the fact. People say we're Africa and South America connected. They're still connected right now underwater. If you lowered the water level or raised the water level, the shape of the continents change. The shape of Africa and South America is a pure coincidence based on the water level. By the way, I'm in Indiana in a car sitting out on the street. So if I get lousy signal or something, apologize for that. I come up because my wife's mother is very, very sick, very, very sick. So probably not going to make it. Anyway, so we come up to visit her. Anyway, family trees. You say you guys believe by faith, it's a religion, that a protista or a bacteria or an amoeba, a single-celled creature of some kind, turned into everything. Fish, humans, apes, All forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor. This is what the kids are taught. And of course, if you teach a kid this 12 years in a row, he's going to believe it. It doesn't make it science. It doesn't make it true. It's a propaganda technique. You can teach kids communism's good, and the Chinese kids and the North Korean kids learn that. In Germany, that not Hitler taught them, or Nazism is good, Nazism is good. The fact that you can get a mass of people to believe something does not make it true. All forms of life came from a common ancestor, found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. We all came from bacteria. This is what the kids are taught. I taught science 15 years, science and mathematics in high school. And I collect public school textbooks. I have probably 400 or 500 of them. This is what they're teaching. That it says no traces of those events remain. No fossil. The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret of paleontology. Evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference. However reasonable, it is not the evidence of fossils. Stephen Gould admitted that, and he was a great believer in evolution. So I feel bad for these guys making these family trees, drawing lines on paper, and claiming these evolved in Australia and these evolved someplace else. That's not a scientific statement. That's a religious statement. You say the butterfly and the humans are related. Probably all the butterflies could have been related. I wouldn't argue that. But that doesn't prove humans are related to butterflies. So, family tree of dogs. And we could go on all night. Watch my video series. It's all available on drdino.com. You can get all my videos. We broadcast live every night, Monday through Friday, on many channels. They keep taking us off of YouTube, but run everything else on Facebook, Rumble, X. We have our own app, KentHovind.tv, Instagram, TikTok. Go to drdino.com. All the channels are listed there. So what I want to do is I defend the position. The Bible says God created the heaven and the earth in 6 days. I cannot prove that scientifically. I think that's the only logical option. If I found an ink pen laying on the sidewalk and I said, nobody made this, everybody think I'm crazy. It's a simple ink pen, a marker.
I don't see it.
This had a designer. Is that 10 minutes?
Oh, no, that's not 10 minutes yet. You still got 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I admire the faith of these guys like First Amender. They have great faith in their belief, but it goes back to several unfounded ideas. One is that all the layers of the earth are different ages. The geologic column started in 1830, when it really became popular. It doesn't exist. All the layers are the same age. All over the world, thousands of petrified trees have been found standing up, running through all the layers. There's no such thing as a geologic column. If the top layer is younger, I keep asking people, where's this dirt coming from? Is it coming from outer space? All the layers were formed during Noah's flood, with the moon pulling the water up and down, called tidal pumping. If the moon's pulling the water up and letting it back down, it means it's rushing in and out sideways, and that's what made all the layers. Go to experiments in stratification video on YouTube. So I think the whole problem comes because you guys have been taught for years, and you probably believed it, that the layers are different ages, and the fossils found in those layers mean something as far as changing to something else. All the layers are the same age, and the fossils in those layers mean they all drowned in the flood. If there's any sorting, it's best explained by other factors like habitat. Clams are at the bottom because they live at the bottom. They're the first ones buried. Birds are at the top because they're the last ones to die. They're sorted based upon their body density. Clams are heavier per cubic inch than birds are. They're sorted based upon intelligence and mobility. Lots of other factors. It has nothing to do with evolution. So I'm sorry they taught you that and that you believed it, but there is no such thing as a geologic column. All animals always produce after their kind. There are simply no exceptions. Dogs always make baby dogs. And you can selectively breed for smaller or larger or more ferocious or tamer or floppy ears or ears standing up. But it's always going to be a dog. You're never going to get anything other than a dog. And there are limits. There are limits to the size. They want to get bigger dogs. Okay, you got the Great Dane. You're never going to get a dog as big as an elephant, but there are animals as big as an elephant, like an elephant. I would say God made them to bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever observed, and we've always observed there are limits, variations within the limit. And so you guys wish to imagine that carrots and bananas and humans are related. That's not science. That's all. Go ahead.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we are going to get into the rebuttal round. So this will be 5 minutes for each of you to rebuttal right directly to your opponent's opening. So it's no interjections yet. And then after you each get 5 minutes, we'll get into the open hour. So we'll hand the mic back to First Amender. When you're ready for your uninterrupted rebuttal, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay, and so I wanted to start off by saying I wish I don't know if I heard you correctly, but was it your mother that's sick?
My wife's mother, yes, huh?
Your wife's mother. Okay, well, I wish her well. I wish your wife's mother well, that they do all right. I'm an atheist, so I dare not pray. I hope the wishes is probably going to be best. So as for the idea of microevolution, so to adhere to microevolution is to adhere with macroevolution, however, with more steps. It's as if that if I made like little baby steps, that if I had enough time, would it result in large tracts of land? I would imagine if I inched along wanting to walk a mile, eventually I'd reach a mile. It would take more time, but it is possible. If you could adhere to microevolution, then you would adhere to macroevolution, but with more steps. Also, there is no like micro or macroevolution. There's just evolution. To state that evolution is a religion, not a science, we've observed these fossils having a clear movement based on the fossil record, transitionary species that follow exactly what we expect based on biogeology, based on genetics, based on the fossil record. Stating it is just lines on paper. It is not lines on paper. The lines on paper represent connections based on a genetic basis or an endogenous retroviruses, similarity of creatures, flora and fauna, all of which lead to common ancestors. To state that I admire your faith, I do not have faith. I only have conviction. I only hold my conviction and do not possess faith. Animals only produce after their kind. That is correct. I know your phrasing on that. You've been saying that for several years. It is correct. Animals only produce after their kind. Vertebrates will always make vertebrates. Eukaryotes will always make eukaryotes. Mammals will always make mammals. You always have your ancestry forever. You simply share a common ancestor, which shows an adherence to evolution, not against it. And with that, I cede the rest of my time.
Okay.
All right. So we'll hand the mic back over to Dr. Kent Hovind. Whenever you're ready, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Mammals always make mammals. You always stick with your ancestry. What he tried to do just there is to sneak in the idea that we can go, dogs always produce dogs and vertebrates always produce vertebrates. Now, hold it. That is sneaking in something that's never been observed. You said several times in your rebuttal that the fossils are evidence. You can't prove any fossil had any children. You simply cannot prove that. You certainly cannot prove any fossil found anywhere had children that were different than itself. Nobody sees animals today doing that. And your answer was classic. I liked it. I'm going to use that one. You said, given enough time, that proves it's a faith. It's not observable. Science, well, we can observe. You don't observe dogs come from non-dogs or produce non-dogs. Nobody's ever seen that. You believe it could happen if you had enough time. That's my point. It is pure faith. By the way, I forgot at the very beginning, I should have objected to, you called it evolution versus creationism. It should be evolutionism versus creation. The ism goes on the evolution, like communism, Nazism, socialism. Okay, it's a belief system. It really is. And I think if you go back and listen to what you just said, you'd have to agree that you slipped in several admissions of you take that you believe it. You have a conviction. You don't have knowledge. I think in science class we should teach science, not somebody's religion. If you wish to believe it, fine. Now, all over the world, all the continents have what's called a continental shelf. If you lower the water a few hundred feet, the Australia or Africa, Alaska and Russia are connected. There'd be the beach way out there. If you raise the water a few hundred feet, that's what America would look like. The ocean, there's what the beach would look like if you this is just lowering the oceans 300 feet. The oceans average 12,000 feet deep. If you lower the oceans a few hundred feet, everything is connected. Australia is a peninsula off of Vietnam. How did the kangaroos get to Australia? They hopped. That's how they get everywhere. So I think the ice caps would be huge. I believe the ice age took place at the very beginning of the flood. The ice caps were formed very quickly. I cover that on my video number 6. You can get those on drdino.com. If the ice caps are bigger, that means the oceans are smaller. Like, duh, you lower the ocean level and everything's connected. So less aggressive animals could go from where Noah's Ark landed over several hundred years while the ice caps are slowly melting back. That would give them time to get wherever they want to go. We have a continental shelf around almost all the continents. If you lower the oceans 200 or 300 feet out of 12,000, that's near nothing. So lowering the oceans 400 feet, everything's connected. So the whole idea of Pangea, that the continents are sliding around and moving, is unnecessary. Just lower the ocean level and you connect everything. Anyway, so that's my take on that. I think I go to the theory that the mammoths had long hair, and they find them frozen standing up with food still in their mouth, still in their stomach, and they suffocated. They didn't drown. I believe they were buried in rapidly falling snow from the beginning of the ice age at the beginning of the flood. Now, again, I can't prove this scientifically. I think that's a logical explanation. So if I was going to demand that everybody pay for my belief to be taught, then I think the burden of proof would be on me. But the burden of proof is on you evolutionists who demand that everybody pay for your belief to be taught as part of science. We should have a special school for those who want to pay and come learn it and go learn all the evolution you want. It should not be included in our public school system. The debate tonight is the origin and diversity of life. I think the origin of life cannot possibly be explained without a creator. So far, all efforts to produce life have failed. The complexity of life is unbelievable. One cell in your body is more complex than the space shuttle, and the average person has 100 trillion cells. They say if you extract all the DNA from all your cells and unwind it and tie it together, it'll go across the solar system twice. That's the code to make one human being. Now, if you wish to believe it happened by chance, okay, you believe what you want, but that's not science. It is way too complex. It had to have a creator. Now, if some people don't like that, okay, I'm sorry. That's the way it is. There's a designer of this universe. And I think the guy who designed it not only created life, he created each life with the ability to produce diversity of children. One couple can have 10 children. They can have them all different. You can get a redhead, blonde hair, blue eye, red hair from one couple. The diversity in the genetic code is amazing, but it's limited. This is where you guys either don't get it or can't admit it. The diversity of an amoeba or a protozoa, they can produce some that are resistant to heat, some that are resistant to cold, some resistant maybe to a pesticide. Okay, but they're still a bacteria. They're still a single-celled creature. But you, in your wild imagination, believe that ability to produce a variety can turn it into a whale over billions of years. Not science. Thank you.
Sorry about the timer. I forgot I didn't have it muted. And thank you for that rebuttal. What we're going to do now is move into the open floor.
So I didn't want to go off and wanting to question or discuss your faith specifically, because I don't think it's actually relevant to the discussion. The specific prompt is evolution provides a better explanation for the origin and diversity of life than creationism. So I don't need to get you to concede saying that God does not exist or anything. You can still believe in God. Specifically, the question that I'm going to ask is, I gave a very detailed explanation to the existence of many, many different species on planet Earth, showing the biogeological pathways and giving you specific criteria of that. So if what you're saying is true, why do we not see migration from Mount Ararat between all species if what you're saying is true?
Well, suppose all the fossils in the world were formed in 1 year in Noah's flood. Anywhere where fossils are being formed today, billions of animals are dying every year. Colonel Sanders killed a bunch himself, and none of them fossilize. In order for something to fossilize, it has to be buried quickly and under proper conditions and under enough pressure that the minerals can be absorbed into the fossil as it slowly decays. So nobody sees fossils forming anywhere, but the world has trillions, quadrillions, if you want to count diatoms, of fossils. I think nearly all, I'll give it a 99.9% of all the fossils in the world formed in 1 year in Noah's flood. And they're sorted based upon various reasons, body density. You can put if you put a dead squirrel, a dead clam, a dead bird in a large jar and shake it up, it'll settle into different layers because they have different body densities. It has nothing to do with evolution. Finding one below another one does not prove that's the grandpa of the one above it. If I get buried on top of a hamster, that doesn't prove he's my grandpa. This whole idea of you guys really trust this fossil record, and you take it by faith. You take these family trees completely by faith. Here we have an elephant on the far left connected with the line over to where a bat comes in. Do you believe an elephant and a bat had a common ancestor? This chart says there is. Nobody's ever seen a bat produce a non-bat or an elephant produce a non-elephant. This is your faith. You don't want to admit that, I know, because then it makes you sound religious. But we observe elephants produce elephants. That's been seen all over the world. We don't observe elephants and bats coming from a common ancestor. This is imagination. This is a belief system. You're welcome to it, but stop calling it science.
Right. You didn't address at all what I was trying to ask you. I'm going to ask you again. Why do we not see migration from Mount Ararat, but instead see migration based on the biogeological locations that I've presented? Why is it spread out in that way? Like for example, why do we see the Pinus genus like that? Why does it exist that way as opposed to separating from Mount Ararat and going out?
Okay, I'll answer it real simply. You don't see migration from fossils at all. All fossils tell you is they died. They don't tell you that they're migrating any place. The fact that we find certain fossils in certain areas, the fact is nearly all types of animals have been found in most of the layers. But if you found a dinosaur bone in a layer of dirt, it would automatically be, they would classify the layer as Jurassic because it has a dinosaur bone. How do you know? What's the difference between Jurassic limestone and Cambrian limestone? It's both limestone. The only way they classify these is by the fossils they find in them. So the fossils determine the name of the layer, and the layer determines the age of the fossils. It is pure circular reasoning. There is no geologic column. You can't see migration from fossils. It's not possible. Finding a squirrel fossil in some place doesn't mean it came from someplace else.
So
fossils are not forming today.
Let's say, for example, that we find that there is a wolf carcass, and through carbon dating, we're able to determine that the wolf is 5,000 years old. But we don't find anything really, newer than that. It's just 5,000 years in carcasses of wolves in that location. And then let's say that we look to the east, we look to the north, we look to the west, and we see to the east specifically, there's wolf carcasses 4,000 years old. You're saying that you cannot infer that migration occurred within 1,000 years?
Okay, you have way more faith in carbon dating than you should. Carbon dating was invented after World War II with the atomic bomb. They realized, man, this is producing some strange things, Carbon dating is based on obvious assumptions that how much was in it when it died, how much C14 was in it when it died. All of the carbon dating is done by comparing the fossils to today's carbon-14 content. I cover this in great detail on my video 7. If you want to call into my show any night, we have question answer every night. But I spend lots of time debunking carbon dating. People who understand it don't use it. They say, no, this is not going to work. It's based on obvious assumptions. If I asked you, if you walked into a room and found a candle burning on a table, let me get up. I got tons of stuff on this. Carbon dating is based on the geologic column. The geologic column doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a geologic column. All the layers formed in 1 year. Polystrata trees prove that.
So carbon dating is not based on an assumption. Carbon dating, what we look at carbon-14 and carbon-12, and we add those two together. That would be the original amount of carbon-14 based off of logarithmic half-lives. So are you saying that half-lives aren't real?
Well, I understand this very thoroughly, okay? Yes, carbon-14 decays at a certain rate today. Half of it decays every 5,730 years. Has it always decayed at that rate? We know solar sunspot flares and the solar cycle can affect the rate of carbon decay. And plus, if the Earth, if the animals in the original world...
That's empirically false.
Well, you're incorrect, okay? Check it out. The rate of decay from carbon-14 and all the radioactive elements, you don't know that they've always been the same. You don't know the initial content. I use the illustration to help people understand. If I told you to fill a barrel with water, but I drilled holes in the other side, as you put water in, eventually it starts leaking out the bottom hole, then the second hole. Eventually you reach a place called equilibrium. You can't fill the barrel past that point. They knew about this problem with carbon dating when they invented it back in 1950, Willard Libby, University of Chicago. They knew that the sun is producing the carbon-14 on the Earth by striking the nitrogen atoms, turning them to carbon-14 instead of nitrogen-14. So they said, wait a minute, the sun is producing the C14 and it's decaying at a 5,730-year half-life. I agree. So Earth's atmosphere, C14 equilibrium.
So would you agree for, like, for example, the age of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Or would you just reject the Dead Sea Scrolls, just out of curiosity?
Let's not change topics yet here, okay?
No, it's the same topic. It's regarding carbon-14.
Okay, well, let me finish my point, okay? They decided when they first invented carbon dating that it would take about 30,000 years for the Earth to reach this equilibrium point where the sun is producing it at the same rate it's decaying. 30,000 years to reach equilibrium. Then they said, wait a minute, the atmosphere has still not reached equilibrium. But they said back in the 1950s, we know the Earth is millions of years old. Wrong. So we can ignore the equilibrium problem. Wrong. It has still not reached equilibrium. Radiocarbon is forming 28 to 37% faster than it's decaying. They've known this since 1985. Well, if carbon-14 if we still haven't reached equilibrium, there was more in the atmosphere today than there was yesterday, because more C14 is forming. Well, that means you can't carbon date anything. A freshman law student could destroy this in an honest court of law. Fluctuations in the rate of C14 production, at times the production rate will exceed the decay rate. This has been known for a long time. It was invented after World War II. It's an attempt to tell the age of something that contains carbon, meaning once alive. I understand. The formation rate can be affected by the sun and stars and Earth's magnetic field changes. Google it. It's only used for objects less than 60,000 years old. It doesn't even work for that. Samples are easily contaminated. No C14 should be left in samples over 250,000 years old. Yet all fossils have some carbon-14 in them. They assume the Earth's atmosphere has reached equilibrium, and it hasn't. So I'm sorry, you're mistaken. Here's the illustration, and you can have the floor. If you walked into a room and you found it.
This is a misunderstanding of radiometric dating as well as carbon dating. Carbon dating is specifically is referring to half-lives. There will always be an amount of carbon-14 because you're basically splitting it in half. You have to ask yourself, like, if it takes 50,000 years for carbon-14 to convert into carbon-12 by half, then what about the half of that? Well, then there would be 25%. And then after 25%, it'd be 12.5%. But it would just kind of there would be an amount of carbon-14 that would exist basically forever, for as long as ever. It stops being accurate after roughly 50 to 60,000 years, in which case we use radiocarbon dating. I guess, like, my question is, I kind of figured that you would, like, assume that that like U-235 to lead concentration ratios are incorrect. So I figured that I'd go with carbon dating, because we have done carbon dating on several biblical accounts, and we've also done carbon dating on known kings and their artifacts, and have gotten very accurate results from that to a very high degree. I guess if you have to just deny the existence of carbon-14 and its validity, you would basically have to throw out, like, all of, like, actual biblical icons and artifacts that have been recovered and used carbon dating to determine exact times and dates. And so therefore, like, my whole position on that we could observe migration based on carbon or radiometric dating to you would you basically just have to deny all of reality in order to get this to work.
I deny your position. I don't deny reality. The reality is, look at me, the Earth's atmosphere has still not reached equilibrium. So you'd have to know when it lived to figure out when it lived.
So how old do you think, like, Roman times, like, were? Like, do you think
we have written historical records going back thousands of years?
Okay.
Maybe 4,000.
And why is it that we can look at artifacts and get accurate carbon dating?
If you took an artifact broke it up in 6 pieces, took it to 6 different laboratories, you would most likely get 6 different answers.
No, you get accurate results.
Well, then you're mistaken. You need to study that.
So in order to get any amount of sampling, you need to have a sample set, and then you would grab an average out of that in order to get an accurate reading. So obviously, if you're grabbing like
you
one,
get different numbers. So you admit
yeah,
you do
slightly
get
different from here and there, but it's on the basis of it is on the basis of a collection of multiple things, and ensuring that it doesn't have direct access to oxygen. Like, for example, with uranium-235. We can't have it, like exposed in the air because we actually had lead in the air from our gasoline. So it throws off the numbers. So it has to be not exposed in the air and underground. But I mean, I guess like, again, we could confirm carbon dating works. And we also know that radiometric dating works on the basis of thousands of experiments.
You just admitted it can be contaminated.
Yes.
Well, then how do you know it wasn't contaminated from something else 5,000, 10,000, 10 million years ago?
Because the location that it was dug in was buried in the ground.
Okay. Could you ask Mary Schweitzer, who found soft dinosaur tissue? That has been found now thousands of times. Soft blood vessels, blood cells, dinosaur. Why won't they carbon date that?
What?
They offered her an enormous amount of money. Would you please carbon date this dinosaur sample? I'll tell you your answer. They know it's too old.
Yeah. Well, because so what they found the remains of soft tissue by providing a very heavy amount of chemical makeup, but that's beside the point. The problem is that we can observe migration patterns through the death of animals, and so I ask again. We can observe these migration patterns based off of the biogeological boundaries, but we do not see migration from Mount Ararat. We see migration in the sense of the biogeologic regions that I've exhibited to you today. So why is it that we do not see migration from Mount Ararat?
Okay, you find a dead squirrel in Oklahoma. How do you know it's migrating from anywhere?
You carbon date the squirrels that are found in the ground.
And carbon dating has lots of problems.
So if you say you have 5,000-year-old dead squirrel, and then that's like the latest that we found, assuming obviously squirrels exist now, but you get my point. And then we observed later on, we found 4,000-year-old dead squirrel. Then it is safe to assume that the squirrels migrated over the course of 1,000 years to those locations.
Well, that's a wild assumption.
It's not a wild assumption. That's pretty obvious.
First of all, if the carbon-14 is still increasing in the atmosphere, all you know is it lived at a different time. You don't know it moved anywhere. Your migration pattern, desperate attempt to rescue a dumb theory.
That would show that it existed over there, and then in the future it exists here.
So we know it moved.
So then it would have moved.
No. What if all squirrels lived all over the world and that one died at a different time?
Okay, but then when we dig in the geologic column and we can find older and older squirrels and transitionary models to squirrels. Squirrel is a mammal. We can observe that would have existed among the Nearctic and the Palearctic, where it was physically connected. Why do we observe that? Why is it not there in the Afrotropic or the Neotropic?
Well, hang on, moderator. My battery is about to die on my laptop. I'm sitting in a car. I have no way to plug it in and charge it. Can we continue the debate next week when I get back home and can plug in? Or I can do it on my phone, I think.
Are you able to? Do you have a cable to plug into your car?
I think he just said there's nothing to plug it into.
It's an adapter. It's 110 volt, or 117, or 120, depending what you want. Okay. So I apologize. It's flashing at me. It's going to die any second. So yes, carbon dating is not reliable. You just admitted, without realizing it, you trust all this migration pattern stuff you're teaching based on carbon dating, which is not reliable, and based on the geologic column, which doesn't exist. If the top layer is really younger than the bottom layer, please tell me where this top layer came from. How can Holocene be dirt? Where was Holocene dirt hanging out for billions of years waiting to land?
The layer comes from dirt elsewhere.
Well, then it's the same age.
No.
If I shuffle a deck of cards,
because it gets deeper and deeper.
So where's the new dirt on top? How can the top layer be younger? I showed you polystrata fossils.
Volcanism.
Oh, that's for igneous rock. So tell you what, let's please do this debate another time. I'd be honored to do this. I think we should. You've
actually got to go. We've only been going for like 18 minutes.
My computer's about to die.
Well, we've been going for almost an hour. We've been going. We've been going almost an hour.
Were they able to plug it in somewhere?
Probably not in the car though, where I'm at, out in the middle of nowhere here. Battery runs very low. Okay, so no, I'm not afraid of this at all. There is no geologic column. There is no evidence animals migrated. And even then, coming from Noah's Ark, the flood would have destroyed the world, and that layers all formed in 1 year during Noah's flood. There is no geologic column. If I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? by shuffling dirt around doesn't change the age of it. Every speck of dirt in the world's the same age. There is no geologic column. I know that's your Bible, but there is no geologic column. I'm sorry.
It's not my Bible. Why is it that we observe uranium-235 greater degradation the deeper that we dig, as opposed to higher up on the column, if it's all the same age and there is no geologic column?
First place, I don't know that that's true that we do. ICR.org in Dallas, Texas. ICR.org has lots of articles on uranium, potassium, argon dating, and uranium to lead, 208, 206. So I think
235 and 237.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Anyway, yeah, I'm on my phone, and I'll be glad to continue. I would like to continue with the thought. There is no geologic column. If the top layer is younger, where did it come from? Why do we have petrified trees connecting all the layers? You guys firmly believe by faith that the layers are different ages. That's not science. Why would we trust a geologic column? That's what I'd like to hear.
Well, for example, if we have like uranium and it's at the surface, right, from volcanic layers, and then it gets buried, and then the natural decay process through half-lives go through, and so we can get a specific U-235 to lead concentration ratio. And it doesn't matter what isotope you pick. You have U-235, U-237, and then there are analogs of lead, and then we would be able to observe it older and older. The deeper we look, we can observe that, and we know half-lives work. We know it's logarithmic. That's confirmed. That's not a question. We've tested this on known kings. We've tested it on. We've tried to actually increase or decrease the speed of that clock. We've, for example, blasted it with radiation. You were bringing up the sun belt, which would have effectively have been radiation. That it does not get affected. Half-lives do not get affected by that. We've tried throwing it in water. It does not get affected by that. We've tried putting it in under highly pressurized environments. Does not get affected by that. The clock maintains the same. And this has been performed trying to either speed or slow down the geologic clocks. We have been completely incapable of doing that.
Okay, you completely avoided my question. How can the top layer be younger? Even if it's lava or volcanic or activity, igneous rock, it's still reshuffling the same rock. It's not coming from outer space. How can the top layer be younger? I showed you 20 pictures of petrified trees standing up.
Become different.
If a log is petrified standing up, connecting all layers, would you agree that at least all those layers had to be formed within probably a year before the log rotted?
So did Earth have a beginning?
You're avoiding my question.
I'm not avoiding your question. I answered it. I'm saying that it would have had a specific ratio, and then it would continue going as it went down. I've already explained that.
No, you missed. You're not getting it.
Again, you've actually not addressed my question from the beginning, which, I mean, in order to invalidate the question, you've basically have to assume like carbon dating is fake, the geologic column is fake, the radiometric dating is fake, despite the fact that nuclear power plants work and nuclear bombs work. So obviously we know half-lives work. We know that it's highly consistent. We've done tons of testing on geologic dating processes. So we know that it is accurate. What I ought observe is the dead animals in the ground ought disperse from Mount Ararat. But we don't observe that.
I did answer that question. You can't find a dead animal in the ground and know it migrated from anywhere.
Yes,
you know
can.
It died. Look at me. No fossils count as evidence for evolution. You can't prove any dead squirrel you found in the ground had a baby that was other than a squirrel, or came from a mother that was other than a squirrel.
So
science tells us, observable science tells us, squirrels always produce squirrels. Now we've got 13 varieties of squirrels, or maybe 20 different varieties. Okay, the kaibab squirrel, but they're still squirrels. You want me to pay teachers to teach all the kids that squirrels are related to bananas. Do you believe squirrels are related to bananas?
No, they share a common ancestor to bananas.
That means they're related. If
No,
they have a common
no, they have
ancestor,
a
they're
common
related.
ancestor. They split off billions of years ago.
Then they're still related.
No,
They have a common
no, they
ancestor.
share a common ancestor. They are both eukaryotic organisms. They both have cells that contain a nucleus, a cell wall, and a mitochondria. Both bananas and as well as squirrels possess this, right? So they share a common ancestor of eukaryota.
So that means they are related. Are you related to your cousins? Do you have a common ancestor with your cousins?
They're related. They share a common ancestor. Okay, I'm still stuck on the fact
I
that
agree.
If
agree with
for
that.
example, if you have you ever gone hunting?
Yeah, when I was a kid. I don't do much anymore. I don't have time.
Okay, fair enough. So if you've ever seen a dead animal of what you are hunting, is it safe to say that that dead animal is likely in that forest or wherever it is that you're hunting?
Yeah. When you find it there, unless somebody dropped it off. Yeah, I would agree. It's probably got shot or killed there, right?
Okay, so say if you saw a dead pheasant, or maybe the bones of a dead pheasant, it's safe to say there's pheasants there, right?
Has anybody ever seen a pheasant produce a non-pheasant baby?
That has nothing to do with my question. I'm saying if you saw a dead
It has to
pheasant,
do with the
it's
debate.
safe to say that there are pheasants in that area, right?
Okay. Right.
Okay. So what if you found a really old dead pheasant, and then when you traveled and looked around, you found newer versions of dead pheasants? Is it safe to say that the pheasant likely migrated?
No. I think any freshman law student should destroy that in a court of law.
What do you mean,
Listen.
no?
You don't know the pheasants you found dead had any children. How can you prove they had different? And why would anybody believe a
It's
bone
safe
in
to
the
say
dirt can do something?
it's safe to say that if you're seeing a pheasant, right? Pheasants can have babies, right? They make eggs
They can have
and
not-
babies.
Can they come from can they come from a bacteria? Did pheasants come from a bacteria over billions of years?
No, they share a common ancestor with bacteria, and that is so far back that that goes into the last universal common ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
Which
not
again is fairy
related.
tale stuff.
They have a common ancestor. It would have been the last universal common ancestor of a cellular organism, because they're both made of cells. They're a type of cell. Do you understand?
Oh, I understand. Hey, did you know my car and my dog are both attracted by gravity? That proves they're related
Cars
because
and
they're both
dogs are not a
attracted by
good
gravity.
analogy. Cars are designed, and dogs are also designed by humans.
No, dogs are designed by God. Cars are designed by humans.
So dogs have been specifically bred for specific traits. We actually take advantage of natural evolutionary pathways and breed specific characteristics out of the dog by choice. So it is by human design that dogs are the way they are.
Correct. This is called artificial selection. Dog breeders will select a trait to get smaller and smaller dogs, like a teacup chihuahua.
Okay.
Do you think the teacup chihuahua, is there a limit how small dogs can get, do you think?
I don't understand why you think that if you see an old body and then a slightly newer body of the same creature, that does not indicate migration.
I don't see how you know the age of those. That's why I said these radiometric
Carbon
datings,
dating.
all of them. All the radiometric dating methods are based on the assumption
Carbon and
that you know what was
radiometric
in it when it
dating of the
died.
strata layers as well as the fossil
Moderator.
itself.
Moderator, we need to get a system where you shut off his mic when I'm talking and my mic when he's talking. Okay, he interrupts all the time. You've not answered the question. If you have a petrified tree standing up, running through all these layers, how can they be different ages?
How can they be different ages on a petrified tree standing up? I would
showed you a
imagine
picture.
that as it gets older, and I mean, trees, they can last, thousands of years. So it would not surprise me that if you have a stump of something, that it can go through several strata.
Trees can last thousands of years when they're growing. How about a dead tree? How long does a dead tree last where you live?
Also can last a very long time depending on how it has been preserved. If it's in like muddy waters, for instance, it would last thousands of years.
So if all these layers formed quickly in 1 year from Noah's flood, putting all this mud around them, every tidal change would make a new layer of mud.
But that doesn't
That would explain how a tree could be petrified standing up in 1 year through 500 layers.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain the uranium to lead concentration ratios being different based on each geologic strata, nor does it explain carbon dating or lead 207, uranium 235 or 237. And we get accurate dates on all of these. They are all the same and separate things being measured.
You have been thoroughly brainwashed by whoever taught you that. The debate tonight is not on radiometric dating. The debate tonight is on the origin of life, which best explains it. So we're way off track on that.
Yes,
the origin of life.
I agree.
Okay.
So the question is, again, because I took you through a crash course on biogeography, and that explains very clearly all of the things that we observe, right? Let me ask you this. How did the koalas make it? They can, by the way, only eat eucalyptus. How did they make it from Australia and then go to the Pacific, through the Pacific Ocean? And then, I don't know, maybe they took a raft of eucalyptus and then they high-fived Noah as they went up there. And then when they were done, they waddled on back?
Well, as far as I know, it is correct that koalas today can only live on eucalyptus. Does that mean it's always been that way?
But how did they make it to the Middle East?
I don't know. I'll watch the video when I get to heaven. I'll try to relay the message to you wherever you are at that time.
You don't know? Okay, well, I know. I actually have the explanation why that happened. And I explained exactly how marsupials moved from the North Americas to the South Americas to Antarctica to Australia over millions of years. And it turns out when we dig and look for marsupial bones in those locations, we find them because they are all part of the supercontinent of Gondwana. Your biblical explanation does not explain that. We have not exhibited marsupials in Laurasia. Do you see the problem?
Well, you keep saying we. Are you doing the digging?
I'm not doing the digging. I'm looking at what other people have done, what other people have discovered.
So don't say we, say they, okay?
We, as in humanity, as in people, have discovered that we do not observe, for example, marsupials in across China or Indonesia. We observe marsupials in across the Australasian continent. So, like, that's the problem, is that that is well explained, but there is no explanation for the Noah account. How exactly could koalas make it across the Pacific Ocean? It doesn't make any sense. And then they make it back, by the way.
Hold it. Why are you changing subjects to the Noah's Ark story? You're supposed to be explaining how life got started and diversified.
That's abiogenesis. We're not discussing abiogenesis. The question is, evolution provides a better explanation for the origin and diversity of life than creationism. I explained in painful detail biogeography, which is able to explain the exact position of koalas. Koalas make perfect sense under my worldview, and it follows through the fossil record. Yours does not, however. We do not see fossils of koalas stemming from Mount Ararat. It doesn't exist. This is the same with kangaroos, with tapirs, with any of these other creatures that you would not see in the Middle East. Actually, I think tapirs are in the Middle East. Never mind on that one.
Moderator, he just read the debate tonight and didn't even see it. The origin of life is indeed the title of this debate. Am I correct?
Yep, the origin and diversity of life, yep.
Origin of life. So would you please explain to me, Mr. First Amender, how life got started? You said abiogenesis is not part of the debate.
Hypothesis of
he's interrupting again. He's interrupting again.
Yeah, let him finish, Amender. Let him finish.
Sorry, I thought he was done with his question.
The title of the debate is the origin of life, and now you're saying abiogenesis doesn't count. That's the title of the debate. How did life get started? Okay. I think it had to have a creator. It's way too complex to just happen. Okay. You want to take an already complex living thing and say how it changed.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting, but that's not the purpose. Okay. How did life get started? Tell me.
Is it possible, for example, that God designed evolution?
So you may want to change your atheistic stand to agnostic.
I don't
Maybe God
believe that.
started-
I don't believe that. I believe in I think it is abiogenesis, and there's a number of explanations, but we don't have all of the answers. And so I will just defer to I don't know. Not yet,
Very good.
anyway. But the problem
So
is
therefore-
but you can't just sit there and assume an anthropomorphic being that willed into existence these things. But you could easily still believe in God and still believe in evolution. Why not assume that God is powerful enough to create evolution?
Well, you're changing subjects again. I would like to point out,
I'm asking you.
You have just admitted you don't know how life got started, which is the title of the debate tonight.
Yes, because I'm an
Therefore,
honest
you have-
person. I'm not going to
Stop
Let him
interrupting.
finish,
Your
Mender,
Mama
let
would
him
have slapped.
finish.
My mama would have slapped you for this. Okay, I know that. Just learn to behave. Okay, when it's my turn to talk, shut up. When it's your turn to talk, I'll shut up. You have not explained the very title of the debate, how life got started. You've admitted you don't know. Therefore, you have a religious belief that it happened somehow long ago and far away, and you think all students should be required to learn that. The textbooks do tell you that life started from a warm little pond, which was when the rocks got rained on.
But
It
didn't
rained on
you
the
say,
rocks, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive.
But didn't you
So
say that
that's-
you don't know how koalas got to Mount Ararat and made it back without leaving a single fossil?
You're assuming they had to get, the world was the same then as it is now. And that's not the title. The origin of life is part of the title. If you want to have a debate on a different topic, we can do that. But
Okay.
you're dodging the subject, and I know why. You don't, because you have a religion and you won't admit it. You believe life somehow got started. Life is way too complex to start without a designer.
That's you, not me. And it would have actually have started simpler, not more complex. It grows more complex over time, which follows with evolution. And so the problem is that you're specifically honing in on abiogenesis, the origin, but it does
That's the
say
title.
and diversity of life. And so
Right.
what I spent pretty much all of my time in research understanding the diversity of life, because when it comes to abiogenesis, there's a number of hypotheses and all exhibiting chemical explanations. None of them say God or magic God into it, because it's not a scientific question to say God. We're looking for an explanatory model, not an assumptive model. And so
Okay.
if you're
you think
referring
it's
to the
right-
origin, there's numerous hypotheses. I'm not going to be dishonest and say that we know for sure. I mean, I could then say under your basis that, I believe that it was a bunch of magical fairies that brought into life. There are these cosmic fairies that made life, and you would have no way to disprove that. I don't make an assumption that it's fairies. I need to have evidence that it was fairies. Abiogenesis provides numerous explanations, all of them with physical explanations. But specifically regarding the diversity of life, what we ought to observe based on our diversity of life and on your presumption of micro evolution, as in you believe that like the dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark, right? Like the baby dinosaurs, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so they didn't need to grab all of them because they would have like diversified, right?
I'm not sure how many kinds of dinosaurs there are. Let's
Okay.
pick a number, say
Or
there's 15.
any animal. The
Any animal, yeah.
like you would just need one dog in order to get all the dogs, right? That's what you believe, right?
And wolves and
And
coyotes.
same thing with
Right.
birds, wolves. Yeah. Okay. So you would only need. So then what we ought to observe is those slight changes spreading out from Mount Ararat. But we don't see that. We instead see the biogeography that I've presented. Why is that?
Well, again, you're avoiding the very premise of the debate. You have to explain how life got started.
Won't
You
answer
say
the
there's lots
question.
of different hypotheses. Show me which one you believe in, and tell me why we should all be required to pay to have that be taught to all the kids.
Because one of them
it's
is
found
based
out.
on physical evidence, and the other one is based on faith. We have
Where's
a
the-
separation of church and state in the United States because we're a secular society.
Okay, then get evolution out of the schools because it's a religion.
Evolution is not a religion.
It's nothing but a religion.
Evolution
You
is on the
believe-
basis of very careful evidence. And when we observe the geologic column, we observe these things. You have to literally ignore carbon dating, radiometric dating, the entirety of the fossil record. You have to sit there and say that humans lived among dinosaurs. We've never observed a human in the same stratigraphic layer of dinosaurs. And secondly, if, say, for example, you look at the geologic column, we can actually find throughout the entire globe the Chicxulub crater impact, roughly 66 million years ago, and that's exactly what radiometric dating shows. Post that, the dinosaurs disappeared, save for birds. That's what happened. What we ought to observe, if there was a quote-unquote global flood, we ought to observe the same layer. We ought to observe a layer throughout the globe in the same exact spot with the same exact age, but that's not what we observe. We observe localized floods. We could see that there was a Mediterranean flood, for example, roughly 8,000 years ago that likely inspired the Epic of Gilgamesh, which would have inspired your Noah's flood account.
Okay, my turn. Can you please be quiet? We've never observed life starting from non-living material. We've never observed any animal produce a baby other than the same kind. We've never observed human bones and chicken bones found in the same layer.
Just repeating.
Humans and chickens have never been found together. That proves they did not live at the same time. That's your logic.
That's not my logic. I just explained to you my logic, and you're just repeating your same talking points. I've already explained to you. You're right. We have a common ancestor. It always produces after its kind, which is fine. That's literally what evolution will teach you. But for whatever reason, you just say the same thing incredulously and not really. I feel like you're being deliberate on this. It's not.
No. I'm trying to get you to see it. I feel like I'm trying to explain colors to a blind man. Okay. Do you believe you have a common ancestor with a grasshopper?
Yes.
Okay. Joseph, put that down on the chart. He believes we have Strawberry Dave believes he's related to a strawberry.
Hold on. Is a grasshopper a eukaryote?
Yeah, it's got cells that have a cell wall. Sure.
But it was cell
That's
wall
a great design.
with a mitochondria and a nucleus. Okay. Are you a eukaryote?
I believe the designer used a common design for the grasshopper and the humans. Our cells are common. Fords and Chevys have round tires.
Did he just happen to provide the perfect biogeological evidence? Did he just plant that there to test your faith?
I don't think there's biological evidence like you talked about, geographical evidence like you talked about. There is no geologic column. There is no geologic column.
So I actually ended up Googling while you were away. I said, and I had stated that I bet you if you dug into Antarctica that you would find marsupials. And I did not know that we had actually been digging in Antarctica. Do you know what we found?
A lot of ice. I know that. I didn't.
Marsupials.
Good. That's
because
wonderful.
Marsupials would have existed in Gondwana. So we made a prediction. We made a prediction, and then we dug there, and then we found the thing that we thought existed there because of the Gondwanan supercontinent.
Well, let's look at a different theory. Suppose all of the world was habitable, and the oceans were not there. So there were seas. Today, the Earth is 3% habitable. Suppose there were marsupials everywhere. They lived everywhere. And they got buried in Noah's flood, and we haven't found all the fossils yet. And now they found one in Antarctica. That's wonderful. I bet they'll find one in Spain if they keep looking, and they'll find one in France. Who's looking for these?
Okay, but why don't we observe those marsupials? Why would we not observe them spreading out from Mount Ararat based on your statement?
First, I don't know that we don't find that. Secondly, if you find a fossil,
we've never found that.
You keep using we like you're doing it. You haven't lifted a shovel in years.
As in humankind. Obviously, everybody's there's only a very tiny amount of experts that exist out there in comparison to the entire global population, but it's a combination of experts that dig and look and they provide their findings. So when I say we, I'm referring to the plural scientists and the efforts that have been placed by the scientific community. We can observe these things. They publish their findings. You can look this up yourself. Were you aware of the logarithmic decay of U-235 to lead concentration
Oh,
ratios?
we could have a whole debate on all the radiometric dating methods. Schedule another debate. Tonight's debate is the origin and diversity of life. You're telling me the origin of life you don't know, but there are theories about it. Okay? Until they prove it, get it out of the book, get it out of the science books, put it in a religion or fairy tale book.
Abiogenesis is not the same as evolution. We're not talking, these are two separate subjects.
It is this. You have to have a starting point. What is going to evolve? How did life get? I know you want to skip that because there is no answer. So until there's an answer, it isn't science and it shouldn't be required for all students to learn.
Well, there's numerous ways and it's observational.
Which one is correct?
The like palotropy or allotropy? Like, what are you referring to regarding evolution? There's a lot of different evolutionary things that cause evolution to occur. They could be physically separated. They could be included with a new niche food source that one is able to take advantage of. They could be deal with predation, where one of them dies off to a competitive species. They could be selective in the sense that the type of food that is available is not good for one. For example, in like with birds and the beaks and whether or not they eat nuts or worms. What are you asking here? We could observe these things.
I'm asking you to stop dodging the question. How did life get started? That's the title of the debate. The origin of life. All you've said is, we don't know, there's lots of theories. Okay, then you just lost the debate. You did not give a scientific reason for how it started. Many scientists are trying to create life in the lab. They can't do it. I think the only logical conclusion is it had a designer.
All right.
That's it.
I mean, there's several models and they're all competing, but they are all evidence-based. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like,
well, I want you to admit you believe by faith. You have a religious belief, and you're zealous to defend the idea that life got started with a natural explanation, even though we haven't found it yet.
That's you. This isn't requiring physical evidence on the basis of chemical makeup that goes from non-life to life. You, however, through faith, ignoring carbon dating, ignoring radiometric dating, ignoring the geologic column, ignoring biogeography, ignoring physics in general, you're ignoring all of these things in order to make your belief function. But I don't have to ignore any of it. I can just look at what is happening physically. And regarding abiogenesis, I'll admit, I'm no chemist. I don't know all that much about chemistry. I'm pretty weak in it, but there's a few different ways that abiogenesis is. I mean, I'm aware of the RNA world hypothesis, for example, where they believe that that the DNA first stemmed with RNA, I believe, like single replicating RNA molecules. That's fine. Again, it's like these are all physical explanations, right? It is you that requires faith of an anthropomorphic deity to create life, despite the fact that life, the anthropomorphic deity actually changes based on time, as well as what side of the Himalayas you grew up on. Considering you grew up on the west side of the Himalayas, it doesn't surprise me that you don't appeal to an Ahura Mazda or what is it? A Buddha or whatever. You instead appeal to, well, it must have been God that created it. But even on that basis, God can still make evolution. Like, why not just appeal to that instead of just ignoring like a majority of science?
Okay, for the record, then, I would say there are two major points. The first point is, how did life get started? You lost on that one. Now, the diversity of life. How did this first life form, this amoeba, which I'll give you one of those. I'll give you a bacteria. How did it turn to a whale? And where's the scientific evidence of a bacteria turning into a whale over billions of years?
Where's the scientific evidence for that? Evolution and separation. And then, I mean, like you're talking, like from a bacteria to a whale, like you're talking about a mammal, which it would have had to have been billions and billions of years of all sorts of different things. That's how you would go from bacteria to a whale.
Okay, so I'll point down point number two, how it happened. You lost the debate because you don't know. You just trust billions of years to do it.
I provided biogeography. I provided what can be observed in the fossil layers, and you have to ignore that evidence in order to make your position correct. I would be willing to say I would be in favor of your biblical worldview if the evidence showed that. But we don't find a diversity of life expanding out from Mount Ararat. That's not what we observe. What we observe is the biogeography that I've presented you.
Finding bones in the dirt does not prove they had any babies. It does not prove they had different babies. Finding a squirrel halfway between Australia and Vietnam does not prove the squirrel came from anything other than a squirrel.
Well,
you want scientific evidence. Every farmer on the planet in the history of the world will tell you their animals produce the same kind of babies as they are, whether it be cows or sheep or ducks. There is no evidence of a duck producing anything other than non-duck. But you believe a duck and a cow, and you are all three related. That's not science. It's a religious belief. I admire your faith. I despise your science. You don't have any.
Okay. If a squirrel is found, we find a squirrel carcass that's 3,000 years old. Squirrels exist now, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how long does a squirrel live?
Well, the squirrels have always made baby squirrels. It depends. If they're right across the road in Alabama, not too long. They don't seem to be able to make it.
Okay.
If they stay in the woods, live longer, depending on the redneck hunters where I live in Alabama. Okay, so I don't know how long squirrels live. But squirrels always have baby squirrels.
Assume, let's say, 10 years based, Siberian chipmunk or whatever. That's fine.
Sure.
If we observe a Siberian chipmunk, which lives 6 to 10 years, and the Siberian chipmunk is, we see 4,000-year-old carcass of a Siberian chipmunk, and we still see Siberian chipmunks to this day, is it fair to say that they had babies?
It's fair to say that proves creation and the Bible that they never changed. They still produce some baby chipmunks, aren't they?
Answering my question.
You've got a chart showing that chipmunks came from an amoeba and are related to strawberry.
Is it fair to say that the chipmunks had babies?
I think chipmunks have babies. Now, if you find one in the dirt, a fossil, you can't prove that particular one had any babies.
You don't need to worry about that particular one having babies because we're talking about the entire population of Siberian chipmunks. So if you have
but you're counting on that.
The Siberian chipmunks that appears to have something that's 3,000 years old, and we still see Siberian chipmunks today, and a Siberian chipmunk doesn't live 3,000 years. They only live 6 to 10 years. It's fair to say Siberian chipmunks got busy. You know what I mean?
And they made baby chipmunks, didn't they?
Yes.
But you think they came from an amoeba.
Okay.
Where's the change from an amoeba to a chipmunk?
Hold on, wait. So then that means that if it all came from Mount Ararat, we should observe a dispersal from Mount Ararat.
That wouldn't matter. That's not the topic of the debate.
What? No, that's talking about the diversity of life. Because when I brought up biogeography, it literally is referring to the insane amount of diversity of life. Why is it, for example, that we go to all of the Pacific Islands and they have completely distinct, completely different animalia, flora and fauna? Why is that? Why would that be the case?
You're way off topic. It's not the dispersion of life. It's the diversity of life.
Correct. The diversity of life. So there's a diverse life that exists in the Pacific Islands. Now, if you have separation
just a second, man. Let him finish.
Thousands of years.
The dispersion of life is not the debate tonight. The diversity of life. How did chipmunks come from wherever they came from? From an amoeba.
It's talking about the diversity. Wow,
what
know. I'm talking about the diversity across the Pacific Islands.
That's the dispersion of life. How did they get dispersed?
No.
Has anybody ever seen a chipmunk produce a non-chipmunk?
For the final time, Kent.
Oh, good. Final time.
I've already addressed this. You will always be a eukaryote. You will always be a mammal. You will always be a vertebrate. You will always have all of the features of your previous ancestors.
That's what the Bible says.
Oh
yeah, they bring forth after their kind.
The point is that there's evolution.
No, that's not the point.
Okay, well, then why doesn't it disperse out from Mount Ararat and instead follows my exact pathway? I'm still. Why is it perfect? Again, it's explaining the diversity. There's obvious diversity that we can exhibit. For example, why aren't there monkeys in North America? Why not?
I had a squirrel monkey as a pet when I was a kid. What do you mean there's no monkeys in North America? That was in Illinois.
You moved it. I'm saying, like, if you dig in the ground, why don't you see any monkey species? Why isn't that there?
First of all, maybe they have and haven't been reported. Maybe they haven't dug every place yet.
Okay, but we never have. We've never been able to exhibit that.
They're finding new stuff all the time, but that's not the debate.
Could it be because monkeys were a part of Gondwana and Laurasia is not a part of Gondwana?
How monkeys came from an amoeba is your problem. Read the title. It's the diversity of life.
It's not addressing it. We share a common ancestor, not that you are literally related to an amoeba, but you are a eukaryote in the same way that an amoeba is a eukaryote.
I don't understand how you don't get it. If you have a common ancestor, you are related.
No.
Help me explain that.
That's not how that works.
That's not how it works.
No.
I think all humans have a common ancestor named Adam and Eve. I do not think they have a common ancestor with chipmunks or with grasshoppers.
Which, by the way, physically impossible. By the way, if there were only two humans and they had to spread their genes, forget about what it's going to look like 2 or 3 generations. Poor Eve is tired of screwing her sons. But beside that point, beside all of that ridiculous nonsense, there's not enough genetic biodiversity to even enable humans to exist. And also, it doesn't spread out from Mount Ararat. It just doesn't.
You believe all the humans came from a rock. What is the biodiversity of a rock?
No.
You do.
The last universal common ancestor.
What was before that?
The minerals.
The Earth was a hot ball of rock.
From rocks. Not that they are of the rock, but through abiogenesis and the process of heating and cooling and electricity involved, likely lightning storms would have resulted in RNA synthesis. That's the RNA hypothesis, right? But that is a lot better than actually. Wait a minute. I read my Bible. The Bible says you came from rocks. Yeah, it does. You believe that we came from clay and God breathed the breath of life. Did you not?
Oh, no. If you'll shut up for a minute, I'll explain.
Okay.
I believe God can take dust and make a man. I believe General Motors can take metal out of the ground and make a car. I do not believe the car can make itself. I do not believe the dust can make itself into a man. You believe the dust itself made itself into a man. I believe it takes a designer. It takes a designer to make a car. It takes a designer to make a coffee cup out of clay. It takes a designer to make man out of clay. A really smart designer. My wife is coming back. We have family issues here. Please, let's schedule another debate and let's finish this. Let's limit it down now. I would like you to stay on topic. Let's just take the first one, the origin of life. If you don't know and all you have is theories, well, then admit it's a religious belief.
We have hypotheses, but that's fine. I'm willing to admit we don't fully know. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, then stop calling it science. You're the one that
presumes with faith that life came from an anthropomorphic deity on the basis of a deity that you believe that only people west of the Himalayas believe.
You're changing subjects again. The origin of life. If you have hypotheses, but you don't know until it's proven, it's not science. Should these hypotheses about the origin of life be included in science books or in fairy tale books?
Is a hypothesis science?
No, hypothesis.
Hypothesis isn't science.
Read the definition of science.
It comes from the Latin word look at what the scientific method says.
I'm going to send my mama to slap you. Okay.
What is the scientific method?
Let him finish, Amanda.
The scientific method is observation, experimentation, and testing.
Oh,
Show
yeah?
me the observation of life
Could you have
starting from
missed
non-living
maybe
material.
the hypothesis category there?
No.
You're
it's
actually being dishonest. You are
It's
unironically being dishonest here. By
You
not saying hypothesis, you specifically dodged saying hypothesis. Obviously, a hypothesis is a part of the scientific method. So when I'm referring to abiogenesis possesses valid hypothesis with physical explanation, you're saying it is not science, despite the fact that they are hypothesis.
Would you look up the definition of science? It comes from the Latin word "ser," to know. Do you know life got started from non-living material, or do you have a hypothesis about it?
Is the
Until you
scientific
know it, then
method
show it.
science?
Science is observation, testing, and demonstration. Show me where they've tested it.
Observation, research, hypothesis, testing, analysis, and then reporting conclusions. That's the scientific method. The hypothesis is a part of the scientific method. So saying that a hypothesis is not science is nonsense. Obviously, it's science. It's literally written in the scientific method. That is what is required in order to get literal explanations to what's going on.
So if I have a hypothesis that God did it, that is now become science. Let's teach that in the science books. God did it. It's my hypothesis. I think God did it.
That's a fabulous hypothesis. Okay. And you also have the hypothesis that likely that Noah collected all the animals and then freed all the animals off of the top of Mount Ararat. Okay. So then what would a falsification of that hypothesis be? Well, for example, if we dig into the layers of the earth and around Mount Ararat, and then we find that there doesn't, did he have to go? What happened?
Maybe his phone died. Give him a minute here. We're in the last minute too.
Oh my God. Well, we got a full debate out, which is good.
I mean, at least he was able to come back. That was good.
Yeah, that's good.
That was really good.
Yeah.
I think you two are actually a really good matchup, and I think a round two is definitely needed. The chat is loving this.
I agree. I was going to ask there's a bunch of questions here for Kent. They need
Yeah, I know. I had some good questions. Actually, I even wrote down my own good questions for both of you. This debate I've been so excited for.
Me too. I was like, dude, this is huge.